It was a regular day at the news studio. Alan Grayson, a well-known liberal TV host, had been at the top of his game for years. His sharp wit and unfiltered opinions were his trademark. However, today would be the day his life changed forever, though not in the way he expected. During a live broadcast of his political commentary show, Alan made an offhand comment about Karoline Leavitt, a young and promising conservative leader. His words were harsh, even mocking her humble upbringing and personal values. The comment sent shockwaves through social media, sparking outrage from both sides of the political spectrum. "Did you hear what Alan said about Karoline?" one colleague whispered to another in the break room. "Yeah, it's all over Twitter. This isn't going to end well for him," another replied. The network executives were flooded with calls and emails demanding action. Hours later, Alan was called into a meeting with the station's CEO, Mr. Henderson. "Alan, this is serious," Henderson said sternly, looking at him over the top of his glasses. "We've received hundreds of complaints. We can't afford this kind of controversy." Alan shrugged, attempting to brush it off. "Come on, it's just political theater. People overreact all the time." "This isn't just an overreaction," Henderson replied. "You crossed a line. We have to let you go." Alan's jaw dropped. "You're firing me? After all these years?" "I'm sorry, Alan. This is out of my hands." Alan left the studio that day feeling humiliated and defeated. The media quickly ran headlines about his dismissal, labeling him as an example of how division and negativity could backfire. Meanwhile, Karoline Leavitt, the subject of Alan's comments, was watching the news from her living room. Her phone buzzed non-stop with messages from supporters telling her about the scandal. Instead of celebrating, Karoline felt conflicted. She knew the pain of being misjudged and misunderstood. She had spent her entire career standing up for respect and dialogue, even with those who disagreed with her. "I don't want this man's life to be ruined over a mistake," she whispered to herself. The next morning, Alan sat in a quiet coffee shop, staring into his cup of black coffee. He couldn't stop thinking about how everything had fallen apart. His career, his reputation, it all seemed over. He scrolled through social media, reading hateful comments. "You deserve this, Alan," one comment read. "Good riddance," said another. He sighed heavily, wondering if things would ever get better. Suddenly, his phone rang. It was a number he didn't recognize. Hesitantly, he answered. "Hello? Mr. Grayson? This is Karoline Leavitt." Alan froze. "Karoline Leavitt? Why are you calling me?" "I wanted to talk," Karoline said gently. "I saw what happened after your comment about me. I think we need to have a real conversation, off the record." Alan was speechless for a moment. "You want to talk to me? After everything I said?" "Yes. I believe in second chances, Mr. Grayson. I know you probably didn't mean to hurt anyone, but words have power. I'd like to meet and discuss that." A few days later, the two met at a quiet park. It was an unusual sight, two people from opposing political ideologies sitting on a bench together. "I appreciate you coming," Karoline said. "Look, I'm not here to lecture you. I just want to understand why you said what you did." Alan rubbed the back of his neck. "Honestly, I didn't think before I spoke. I've built a career on being provocative, but I realize now that I've hurt people. Including you." Karoline nodded. "I've had my share of harsh criticism too. It's easy to forget that there's a person on the other side of the screen. But I believe in learning and growing from mistakes." Alan sighed. "I've been so caught up in ratings and headlines that I lost sight of what really matters, respect. I thought I was making a point, but instead, I just spread more division." Karoline smiled softly. "The fact that you can admit that shows you're capable of change. Maybe this is an opportunity to do better, to inspire others through a new path." Alan looked at her, a spark of hope returning to his eyes. Maybe you're right. I've spent years tearing people down. It's time I start building bridges instead. In the weeks that followed, Alan made a public apology on his social media platforms, not just to Karoline, but to anyone he had hurt through his past comments. He also announced a new project, a podcast focused on honest, respectful conversations between people with different perspectives. To his surprise, the response was overwhelmingly positive. People appreciated his humility and willingness to grow. Karoline appeared as his first guest, and their candid discussion about empathy, personal growth, and the power of words went viral. The episode was praised for showing that even the deepest political divides could be bridged with understanding and dialogue. As the podcast gained traction, Alan found a renewed sense of purpose. He no longer sought controversy for the sake of entertainment. Instead, he aimed to create stories of healing and unity. Karoline's act of kindness had not only saved his career but had also changed the course of his life. Through her example, Alan learned that true strength lies not in tearing others down but in lifting them up. Months later, Alan stood on a stage at a charity event, addressing a crowd of people from all walks of life. "I used to think that success was measured by how many headlines you could make," he said. "But now I know that real success is about connection. It's about listening, learning, and growing together. And for that lesson, I have Karoline Leavitt to thank." The audience erupted in applause as Karoline smiled from her seat, proud of the man Alan had become. In the end, what had started as a story of scandal and division transformed into one of redemption, compassion, and hope. Proving that sometimes, the most unexpected encounters can lead to the most profound change.